We know him as Billy the Kid, a notorious outlaw of the Wild West. He's a man whose rough and tumble beginnings were perhaps an omen of what his life would become.
His mother died when he was 3 years old, and his aunt, his mother's maternal half-sister, came from the east to get him, and she took him with her to raise as her son.
That aunt died when Billy was only 14 years old. They were living in New Mexico at the time, and the kid eventually began working for rancher John Tunstall. When Tunstall was killed by rival ranchers, a feud known as the Lincoln County War erupted. As a result, Billy was wanted for murder. He was eventually apprehended by Sheriff Pat Garrett, found guilty, and sentenced to hang on May 13, 1881.
He decided it was time he left before they hung him, and so he broke loose, but he shot and killed 2 deputies.
3 months later, Sheriff Garrett, on the trail of Billy the Kid, thought he'd located him in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. About midnight on July 14th of 1881, Garrett shot Billy in the dark. That's where the story begins to differ if you live here in Hico, Texas.
Well, the deputy marshal turns the body over, looks up at Pat Garrett and says, "You've killed the wrong man." But Pat Garrett had to kill Billy the Kid that night. That was the 3rd person he had shot in the back.
Garrett buried the body without letting anyone else see it. Some believe Billy the Kid escaped, lived in Mexico for 3 years, then returned to the U.S., where he worked under several assumed names. But eventually, he settled here.
That is Brushy Bill, William Henry Roberts.
Known as Brushy for chasing stolen horses through wild thickets later in life, the town created this museum devoted to Brushy Bill, a.k.a. Billy the Kid. Sue says folks here in Hico always had a strange feeling about Brushy.
Brushy was known for being a weird cowboy. He'd walk the streets, and when he and his wife would come into town, he would not allow her to walk beside him. He was always afraid somebody would recognize him and she might get hurt in a crossfire or something like that.
But Brushy never shared his story. In the late 1940s, lawyer William Morrison was assisting former outlaw Jesse Evans with a land claim. Evans told Morrison he knew Billy the Kid was still alive and living in Hico, Texas. Brushy Bill confessed to the lawyer he was indeed Billy the Kid. He showed scars consistent with those the Kid was known to have, and facial recognition software showed many similarities. Sue admits she was skeptical that Billy the Kid survived all those years.
It really wasn't until 2014 when I started reading all the facts that I totally believed he was Billy the Kid.
The evidence persuaded Sue that Brushy was the infamous outlaw. The folks in this area certainly believe. Brushy's grave in nearby Hamilton has all of Bill's names, including the most famous. Of course, there's still a marker in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, claiming to be Billy's final resting place as well. But for most of the folks here, and to many across the nation, it was Texas, not New Mexico, where Billy the Kid was laid to rest. So did Billy the Kid die in 1881 in New Mexico, or did he live another 7 decades under the name Brushy Bill? Well, that's for you to decide. And a trip here to the Billy the Kid Museum will help you do just that. Traveling the countryside in Hico, Texas, I'm Andrew McCrae.
Rock and roll.
Coming up on American Countryside, what's the real story behind Billy the Kid? We'll take you to a museum that believes they have the answers.
Works for me.